Imagine opening an official history textbook. There, in black and white, it states, Antarctica is a lifeless, icy wasteland that has been shackled in eternal frost for millions of years. We are accustomed to believing that the first explorers, like Amundsen or Scott, fought through inhuman cold and miles of pressure ridges. But what if I told you that, in the archives of the British Admiralty, there is a logbook gathering dust that turns everything upside down? February 1823. Captain James Weddell, aboard his vessel the Jane, sails further south than anyone before him. And instead of icy mountains, he sees open sea, blue water stretching to the horizon, birds circling above the deck, and whales frolicking in water that was, by the standards of these latitudes, warm. This isn't science fiction. This is a real historical report that has been turned into an inconvenient footnote over the last 200 years. Today, we will conduct a revision of history and try to understand what exactly happened to the sixth continent just a couple of centuries ago. James Weddell was not a theorist or a seeker of Atlantis. He was a practical naval officer, interested in seals and navigation. His entries for February 20th, 1823 sound like a vacation summary. Air temperature above freezing, sea completely clear of ice. He named this area in honor of his king, George IV C. Today we know it as the Weddell Sea, and the irony is that it is now one of the most dangerous and ice-choked places on the planet. Why does this matter? Official science tells us that Antarctica froze about 34 million years ago. But if there was open water in 1823, it means the glaciation process is not an ancient constant, but something that happened just yesterday in planetary terms. Or we are facing a global revision of maps. Let's look even deeper. We have all heard of the Peary Race map of 1513, where Antarctica is depicted without ice, featuring rivers and mountains. Historians say it's a mistake. The cartographer simply added land for symmetry. But wait. In 1957, during the International Geophysical Year, scientists conducted a seismic scan of the continent beneath the ice sheet. And you know what? The contours of the subglacial terrain match the 1737 maps of Philippe Boischet with frightening precision. How could people in the 18th century know the outlines of shores hidden under an ice layer 2 kilometers thick? There is only one answer. They saw these shores with their own eyes. If in the 1820s, people like Weddell or the Russian navigator Bellingshausen saw open water and rocks, when did Antarctica become the white silence? Fast forward to 1914. Ernest Shackleton, aboard the Endurance, attempts to repeat the path deep into the Weddell Sea. But instead of open water, he finds a death trap. His ship is crushed by ice. In 90 years, the ocean transformed from a navigable route into an impassable blockade. This isn't just a statistical anomaly of the climate. This is a global transformation. In the mid-19th century, geographical societies began to form all over the world. London, Paris, America. That was when the great cleansing of maps began. Explorers of that time started systematically removing rivers, bays, and island names from Antarctic maps, replacing them with white. The story of Charles Wilkes, the American explorer of 1838, is an example of how the system punishes those who see too much. Wilkes mapped a vast stretch of the Antarctic coast. Upon his return, he was court-martialed. Colleagues claimed that where he saw land, there was only ice and water. His reputation was destroyed. However, in the 20th century, when technology allowed us to look under the ice, it turned out Wilkes was right. He really did see land that was later buried under the advancing glacier. The system declared him a liar simply because his data did not fit the new concept of a permanently frozen continent. Why hide the truth about Antarctica? Perhaps the answer lies in the fact that acknowledging a recent freezing of the continent destroys the entire modern model of climatology and geology. If Antarctica froze in just a few decades in the 19th century, then our understanding of Earth's history is fundamentally wrong. We see a pattern. Bellingshausen's reports were not translated into English for over 100 years. Weddell's navigational data was downgraded to the status of an anomaly. Wilkes's maps were discredited. This isn't a movie-style conspiracy. It's a convention. A quiet agreement among the academic community. Ignore what is too difficult to explain. There is one strange nuance that is rarely discussed. The mid-19th century was a time of industrial boom and the birth of photography. It would seem we should have received thousands of pieces of evidence. But it was exactly at this moment that Antarctica became the most closed zone on Earth. Look at the old photographs of that period. Those rare shots that have reached us were often retouched. In the newspapers of the 1850s, articles began to appear preparing society for the idea, "There is nothing there but ice. Don't waste money on expeditions." This was an era of the consolidation of knowledge. If previously any whaling captain could contribute to geography, now that right belonged only to state institutions. And institutions love order. A warm Antarctica brought chaos. It suggested that the world was far more volatile and dangerous than colonial empires wanted it to be. It was easier to declare the South Pole empty than to admit that an entire world was freezing before our eyes, and we didn't understand why. We created the myth of the heroic age of exploration to cover the fact that we simply lost access to territories our ancestors visited in ordinary wooden boats. 20th century technologies, radars, satellites, icebreakers, were marketed as the key to discovering Antarctica. But in reality, they became mere tools to confirm a decision already made. Antarctica is ice, period. Any data showing anomalous warmth or remains of flora under the ice are labeled as relics of the deep past. The word deep is key here. It pushes the truth back millions of years, making it safe for the current agenda. Today, Antarctica is protected by international treaties, military bases, and a harsh climate. But beneath the icy shell, subglacial rivers still flow, their channels drawn on maps long before the appearance of satellites. On that February afternoon in 1823, James Weddell saw a world we are forbidden to imagine today. A world where Antarctica was part of a living ocean, not its icy plug. The logbook still holds those coordinates. And perhaps the time will come when the ice retreats again, revealing rivers, mountains, and perhaps the traces of those who mapped them thousands of years ago. History is not what actually happened. It is what remains after the censors have done their work. But Antarctica knows how to keep secrets, and it knows how to reveal them at the most unexpected moment. Always remember, the logbook says otherwise, and that is a story for another time.